Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. And a ton of you have requested for me to make this video over the past 12 hours, and I was gonna do it regardless because in my personal opinion, vast majority of Alliance War changes absolutely suck and represent the least imaginative, totally creative spirit devoided approach to sorting major significant structural issues in Alliance War in completely the wrong manner that in effect just digs a deeper hole. Honestly, at this point, after seeing what I read here, I doubt the dedication of whoever is designing this, or I doubt the ability to, well, improve the Alliance War in a manner that Alliance would enjoy. Now, there are good changes, few and far in between, but ultimately, I think they will be significantly outweighed by the negative implications, which we're going to go through point by point, and I'll break down each and every one of them individually. Now, first thing, that expert map predefined tactics situation and predefined offensive and defensive tactics, that is kind of nor here nor there. Fact of the matter is, it's pretty much pointless change, because all of these neat arguments are going to be reducing the officer preparation time and stuff like that. And the only real thing they are going to be doing is going to be taking away the choice. There has always been one tactic, anyhow, that largely dominates the field. And due to that, the preparation time for planning it will not change in itself. If anything, this will increase it, because now the tactics will be selected by random and you will not be able to pick the tactic that you kind of like used to playing or is quote unquote the best. Now, there is the slight upside of potentially having increased variety of defenders to face off against season per season. However, it also comes with a cost of those defenders having to get ranked up. And if previously, when a new meta came out, you were relatively sure that I'm going to rank this champion up for Alliance War defense and it's going to put in some work, well, now it's less significant impact of each individual defensive rank up. And this is just going to annoy more people who play competitive Alliance War by being forced to rank up champions they otherwise wouldn't in order to stay competitive for the season. So basically, this also increases demand for defense-centric rank ups more frequently, which is not a great thing. Nobody really loves ranking up champions for defense. But when it comes to actual officer work and the use of these defensive tactics, well, I don't think that anybody can deny the fact that there has always been one dominant tactic. When Stubborn was up, Stubborn was used by pretty much everybody for 95% of the wars. When Flow Wars happened, well, that was Flow, and that is how we remember phases of Alliance War seasons, is by these defensive tactics. Why? Because they were so dominant. And by the same logic, you were always facing them anyway, so there is no significant change for planning for them. If anything, right now you're going to be increasing, well, the need for officers to completely revamp their defense for next season in order to use the defensive tactics that majority of them have not done so. And then again for the next one, if that is going to be any other defensive tactic than the high altitude one or whatever. And on top of that, rather than not just solving, I would say, non-existent problem here, it also removes the choice, removes the ability to decide whether you want to catch opponent by surprise. It was a fairly common tactic, for instance, when Stubborn Wars were dominant, quite frequently whenever you matched like some very hard matchups, just because opponents are not experienced to fighting against, I don't know, Protect instead of Stubborn or something like that, people did mix things up to catch people off guard. So that even removes this element. So I won't dwell on this too much. I don't think it is like the end of the world, but overall I watch and look at this as more of a negative than I do with a positive, because you're going to have increased demand for defensive rank ups. Officer preparation time is going to be pretty much exactly the same, if not higher, because now they will have additional defensive plans to lay out for defensive tactics that you would have never used otherwise. And on top of that, it takes away your ability to actually have a choice. which most people didn't use majority of the time, but at times it was a very useful offensive tool. Now, attack tactics only on hard map, I think that is fair decent chance for people who play the hard map, so it's like tiers 3 to 5, I think. So that is going to be helpful for them, so I have no complaints there. I think it is quite important to make war more accessible and exciting for lower tier alliances, so they have aspirations to climb higher, and I do think that things like this are good. So these changes are definitely good for lower tier alliances for most part, which I think is going to be the takeaway. For tiers, I don't know, 10 to 2, or it's good change for most part. For tier 1, it's absolutely awful. However, there is another thing that makes it significantly worse at the moment. So right now, for the next season, we're going to have this Untouchables defensive tactic reworked with it, which is some of the cheapest shit that I have seen in my life. And many people don't realize that at the moment, but this defensive tactic change will have a significantly larger implication than it initially seems. So all description was basically that it was pseudo protect, where if opponent triggers miss or evade, they gain a protection charge. If you intercept, you can remove it, and all of evade abilities gain plus 15% ability accuracy, which was Bug City. And I'm quite happy that they're getting rid of it. However, the new description states whenever the defender evades or causes attack to miss, they gain 17.5, 25%, or 50% of bar of power, pending which tier you're playing in, over 2.5 seconds. And the next line, if the defender evade or miss abilities fail while they're suffering a slow or concussion, instead they gain 35%, 50%, or 50% bar power. So it's effectively even more aggressive power gain if opponent is slowed or concussed. So this completely takes away all slow and concussion champions as an option to use against evaders. So that in itself I hate. Alright, but there is a second bit to it, because the corresponding offensive tactic this season is slow your roll. Now, if attacker has at least one armor buff, or the defender has at least one armor break debuff, striking the defender with a heavy attack will apply a 10-second slow debuff. And here's like the offensive champion pool that you can use it on. So we're getting this right. So we have corresponding offensive tactic that I wish would be disabled, because God forbid I will actually put a slow on opponent, and slow is going to do what it's supposed to do, which is going to prevent opponent from evading attack. They're going to gain more power than they would have gained otherwise. Now, yes, we can still counter evade effects with ability accuracy reduction and true strike to accuracy, but the entire idea of not only making an offensive tactic legitimate disadvantage, like, I genuinely would like this defensive tactic to be disabled when I'm going in war. And then on top of that, completely basically discarding all of the slow champions and concussion-based champions from being effective evade ability counters. I think that is extremely intellectually dishonest. I think it destroys the idea or point of offensive tactic, and it's utterly shit. Offensive tactic is meant to help you, but in this case, having a defensive tactic that basically kind of like directly counters the entire point of offensive tactic just skews the scales even further on the player's disadvantage. And now, don't get me wrong, I am one of those people who wanted a slight increase in alliance war difficulty or some juggling and more interesting mechanics, but I didn't want it to be done in this outlandish, boring, absolutely shite manner. From what I can tell so far, and again, I'm not going to jump to some sort of final conclusion without actually experiencing and doing these fights, but this is going to be extremely reminiscent of Flow Wars, where for a significant portion of the fights, you're just going to end up eating a random level 3s after level 3s, because 50% of a bar of power or 2.5 seconds is quite significant power gain, you know. And it's not just what it does, it's just the idea that they are making an offensive tactic that's meant to counter this defensive tactic and turning it completely obsolete. And I just cannot support that. I legitimately look at that offensive tactic and I think it's like, I wish that was disabled, and I will not be able to use my slow champions more than likely. So, fuck them. So, this thing is detestable. I hate it. So far, everything that I have read about it, I hate. Maybe after I play it, it grows on me, or it isn't as bad, or whatever. But after reading it, I have not a single good thing to say about it. So yeah, if opponent evades, they gain a 50% of bar power. If they're slowed and they don't evade, they gain 50% of bar power. That sounds super fun. It really does sound super fun. You mother flipping a-holes. Right, let's move on to another point that might not necessarily be as relevant, but represents even more disgusting lack of knowledge about the community and greed in this case. Ties suck. Yes, I agree to the fact that ties suck, but sorting out the issue of ties like this is the most greedy and lazy way I can possibly imagine. Let me explain. So basically, the alliance who has total lower in-fight duration would win the tiebreaker. That means two things. If a smaller alliance with lower ranked defense plays better and ties an alliance who has all rank 3 defenders, the smaller alliance would lose, even though morally they would be the ones that are victorious because they outperformed, tougher defense, and kind of like beat the odds, if you will. So this puts more emphasis on having all or most of your defenders as jacked as they can be, 6-star rank 3s, and if you are not there as a team, then you're shit out of luck. So that is the first thing that is bad with it. The second thing that is awful about using this in-fight time and determining which alliance wins is because it heavily incentivizes everyone to boost their ass off. Effectively, all else being equal, skill level being equal, defense being equal, offensive capabilities and whatever else being equal, the alliance that boosts harder wins. And this reminds me of a time when there were no defensive kill attack bonus thing, and when the winner was basically decided by how many nodes you explore, regardless of how many times you die, and how strong your defense was. And at that time, everybody had to use max boosts to place defense, because it still counted as a increase in defensive PI or something like that. So basically, everybody was placing with Liquid Courage, Double Edge, with basically a specific mastery setup that maxed out your PI, boosted to the max to place the defense. And this will not be as bad, but it still represents the same idea. The alliance that spends more and boosts more wins. Alliance with bigger defense, even though morally you think they have lost the war, because they had better defense, arguably probably better offensive champions, but they died as many times as, let's say, some smaller alliance with rank 5 5-star defenders and rank 2 6-star defenders instead of rank 3 defenders, and maybe rank 5 5-star attackers instead of rank 3 6-star attackers. That alliance that beat the odds and outperformed a bigger alliance wins because of their roster limitations. And then on top of that, if you are facing an equal foe, let's say all of your defenders are rank 3 on both sides, all of your attackers are rank 3 on both sides, then the alliance that can afford more boost wins. So this is a definite anti-player move, 100%. Ties suck, but this is not the way to sort it at all. If you want to mitigate the tie problem, then you need to tune your point systems, then you need to maybe lessen the negative impact of having a tie in first place, and instead of making it both alliance lose and get no win bonus, and maybe make it that both alliance get half the win bonus or something like that. There are definite better ways how to either lessen the number of ties or make sure that there are not as many negative implications of tying a war. But this is the laziest, shittiest, and greediest way how to decide on a tiebreaker. Fuck you for that, sincerely, from bottom of my heart. Undo button, yeah, fuck it, whatever. You want a cookie at this point? Shut up, should have been introduced ages ago. Right. Tier 1 cutoff extended. This is a good change. This is a good change. I have absolutely nothing to say about this. And that more alliances will have access to Tier 1 multiplier. Very good. Finally, somebody used a portion of their brain not to make a shit decision. Okay, let's move on. Hard map timer increase. Also a good change. I always found it unfair that in the highest tier, yeah, the fights that several alliances did not struggle with, like, I don't know, even a boss fight, for instance, or whichever other fights, people in the lower tier could actually be in trouble with because of the timer. And this is another good change. Very simple though, but both of these changes are fairly, again, simple, and both of them benefit for lower war alliances, which again, I'm super happy for. Definitely happy for whoever walks away better off with these changes. But ultimately, even though if systematically some of these changes make it better for you, then actually in the war, whilst fighting, a lot of things here are significantly worse. The biggest controversial point here for majority of the people is Final Boss Island. True focus on both Challenger and Expert maps has been added to all nodes on Final Boss Island. We all know that there are a couple of champions. They specifically say a couple of champions, and they mean Quake and Ghost. And this again reminds me of the shittiest way to solve a problem. This is taking a hammer when you need a scalpel. This is trying to axe off a leg when you need to remove a splinter. You have a problem, you know you have a problem, but you do not have the brain power, intellect, or imagination to sort out that problem without causing significant harm to plenty of other champions. Because that true focus will obviously affect not only Ghost, not only Quake, it also will affect Tigra. Mr. Negative is being used more and more for these boss fights, which is one of the reasons why I actually took him to rank 3 yesterday. Not salty about that at all whatsoever, you assholes. Then there are other people who use Elsa, for instance, and Mr. Fantastic these days. And what's even worse, that yes, some of the champions I mentioned are not the most used champions, but that is because we had Ghost and Quake to use it. So, would you take Ghost and Quake out of the equation, many of those champions that I listed would have been used more. Even like Professor X, his falter mechanic becomes useless, and you basically lose a safety net there. So this is a kind of an approach that just throws a grenade at the problem and hope it goes away. Yes, you will get the job done, but you'll also cause a lot of collateral damage. And there are, again, many different creative ways how to solve these problems. Whether that be using the champion ban system that was suggested by taters like half a year ago by White Mummy or whatever, or redesigning the mini boss fights or whatever. But this just shows lack of creativity or lack of shits to give, because this is the most simple, blunt solution that anybody could pick. Now, whatever, they can't evade, nobody can evade, no miss abilities can trigger, fuck them all, who cares? And I would actually look forward to kind of having a bit less Quake and Ghost in the War. I genuinely would. I'm not even upset about that. But I would be happier at this point if they would just say Quake and Ghost are banned for the war because they're too good, because then they would at least have the decency to admit that they do not have the intellectual capability to fix the problem. Instead, they are living in denial. They don't know how to address these issues that are the real problems, that is Quake and Ghost are too valuable. I'm not saying nerf them. I'm saying figure out how to deal with the problem without hurting a ton of other champions, because you made those champions and you are unable to contain them. And this is exactly what it is. This is exactly what it is. Them not knowing how to address an issue, and instead of trying, they're just making it worse for plenty of other champions. Just because they lack the brainpower to sort the actual problem, which is Quake and Ghost, which they identify themselves here. Which just is, again, sad, uninspiring. Like, I don't know, intellectually bankrupt. Call it as you will. This solution legitimately reminds me of when Labyrinth of Legends came out and everybody took in 4-star Scarlet Witch. And 4-star Scarlet Witch just stun-locked, power-locked everybody and just was blitzing through Labyrinth. And they panicked. And in a moment of weakness, they just put on like Limber and Dulled node, which basically meant that 90% of the champions are unusable, that piece of content, just to stop Scarlet Witch. which is another moronic move that made that piece of content unplayable for many, many months just because they're not clever or creative enough to make out an actual solution or admit that they have fucked up. This is what it is. Fuck them for that as well. Honestly, it's not even about Quake. It's about how they approach problems. We fucked up, we can't solve it, that's why we're just gonna fucking throw a grenade into a champion pool. Next one, nodes and updates. And this is another thing that is stupid. I'm sorry, it really is. I cannot say much else. It is pretty much moronic. They don't know how to make war harder, for the most part, so they're making it more expensive. I've seen the common trend in all of the new nodes, or most of the new nodes. Node 1, heal block. Node 10, heal block. Node 27, special burst lockdown that includes heal block. Node 8, still heal block, but it was there before. Here we still had heal block, still have heal block. Node 34, heal blocks for everyone. Node 44, heal blocks for everyone. Here I'm sure they're gonna find some way to heal block it. And EMP modification, sure. Aspect of evolution, wonderful. 46, Chitonius Thorns. And here, safeguard, because everybody loves to see safeguard on a minibus. I don't know. Disappointing, uncreative, intellectually bankrupt changes to these nodes, as far as I can tell. They're unable to design better, more interesting, and more challenging fights. Therefore, they're designing shittier fights, is what they're doing. And I don't know how hard they're going to end up being, but I know for a fact that they just made them more annoying, like in the most boring, shittiest way possible, because everybody loves heal block, right? Like, believe it or not, changing masteries is a huge pain in the ass. And offensively, if you play high tier alliance war, you do have to change in between the masteries depending what champions you're using. Randomly adding heal block to this, again, it doesn't seem that they are bothered about increasing the difficulty, challenge, or excitement of the war. It just seems that they're bothered in increasing cost of the war. You can clearly see through the motivation, and it is not to give more challenging experience or more skill-intensive fights. It is to give more expensive fights. It is to modify a defensive tactic that lets opponent gain a ton of power, so end up level 3s. Modify a bunch of nodes where you have to deal with heal block, therefore you cannot run your Liquid Courage double edge mastery setups. Adding a bunch of nodes that everybody hates. Instead of reworking the entire fight, you just add more needless crap on top of it. Largely remaining the same fight identity that everybody's tired of, that we have been dealing with for 10 seasons. I don't know who works on Alliance War, I really don't. But reading this, I'd question the fitness, or at the very least the motivation of these changes. I have conversed with a ton of top tier Alliance war officers from New Nation, from our own alliance, several different alliances, basically majority of the alliances that take war the most seriously. I haven't found a single person that unanimously likes these changes. These changes are all right, okay for low tier alliances, for which I'm happy for you. I really am. I don't want to take anything away from you, and anything that makes game better for anybody is ultimately a positive thing, especially subjectively for you. But the changes for the top and the actual in-fight changes are, again, dishonest, shallow, and they do not represent the interests of Alliance War as a game mode. They do not represent the interests of players who take Alliance War seriously. They do not make the war more exciting. They do not make the game mode more attractive. Only thing that they are geared to do is to make Alliance War more expensive, tedious, annoying, and frustrating. I genuinely did not expect announcement this shit to come out in regards of Alliance War, who is a game mode that is in desperate trouble. Don't get me wrong, Alliance War was in shit state 3 months ago. The last set of changes made Alliance War significantly worse overall, with the individual attacker tactics and whatever not. And this is the third consecutive announcement that makes Alliance War even more shit, as far as I can tell. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm exaggerating. But I do expect a ton of issues with Alliance War. And at this point, I think the game mode, the map, the system is fucked so far up that even... Okay, anyways, it's just... I just recommend starting over. Go with a new map, redesign your systems, redesign your points. Do something that shows that you care about how much you want us to play the Alliance War. Because these changes say nothing of it. Again, there are some good changes, namely for tier 2 and lower alliances. Some of the things are relatively neutral, but almost all of them are lazy, is what I think. And again, I'm not even fussed about the Ghost and Quake situation too much. I don't necessarily agree with it, but, you know, I'd rather them flat out say Ghost and Quake is banned from Alliance War, and I would be able to swallow that hit, than them randomly just nuking down away and miss mechanics offensively. Who the fuck thinks that is a good idea? I don't know. Anyways, that is it for today's video. Let me know what you guys think about the Alliance War change, and I'm gonna catch you guys soon. See ya. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about